What if I told you that the person you think you are is only half the story? Every day, we make decisions, react emotionally, and navigate relationships, often believing we're acting with full awareness. But what if much of what drives us lies beneath the surface, hidden in a part of ourselves we refuse to face? This is the unsettling truth Carl Jung pointed toward when he introduced the concept of the shadow self. Jung believed that every human carries a hidden side, a dark mirror of the self, composed of the thoughts, impulses, and traits we reject or deny. These aren't necessarily evil parts of us, but they're parts we've been taught to suppress. Anger, jealousy, vulnerability, selfishness. Pushed into the unconscious, they don't disappear. Instead, they grow stronger, silently influencing our behaviors, sabotaging our goals, and erupting in moments we least expect. This video will take you on a journey through the psychology of the shadow self. You'll discover what the shadow self really is, how it secretly shapes your actions and identity, the dangers of ignoring it, from emotional breakdowns to toxic patterns, and how you can confront and integrate your shadow through a process known as shadow work. By the end of this video, you'll begin to see yourself and your hidden patterns in a completely new way. The truth may be uncomfortable, but facing it might just set you free. What is the shadow self? The repressed, shadow self, is a concept rooted in the work of psychologist Carl Jung. It refers to the part of our psyche that contains everything we've rejected, denied, or suppressed. Thoughts, emotions, and traits we've been taught are unacceptable. These hidden parts don't vanish. Instead, they retreat into the unconscious, shaping our behaviors and reactions from behind the scenes. From a young age, we begin to form our shadow through childhood conditioning. Messages like, "Don't cry," "Be nice," or "Don't be selfish," may seem harmless, but over time, they teach us to reject natural human emotions and impulses. For example, if a child learns that anger leads to punishment or disapproval, they might suppress their anger to gain love and acceptance. The result? A split between the acceptable self, the version of ourselves we show the world, and the repressed self, which remains buried beneath the surface. It's crucial to understand that the shadow is not inherently evil or dangerous. It's not the villain in our story. Rather, it's the part of us that holds unacknowledged pain, vulnerability, and unmet needs. Often, the traits we hide, like ambition, sadness, or assertiveness, are simply aspects of ourselves that never had the chance to be expressed in a healthy way. A helpful way to visualize the shadow is through the iceberg analogy. Our conscious mind, or the self we're aware of, is just the tip of the iceberg above the water. Beneath the surface lies the unconscious, an enormous, unseen force containing our fears, desires, memories, and shadow material. Though we may not be aware of it, this hidden part can strongly influence our choices, relationships, and sense of self. Carl Jung captured this idea with one of his most famous quotes: "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This means that until we explore and integrate the shadow, it continues to shape our lives without our awareness. We might find ourselves stuck in the same patterns, reacting strongly to others, or feeling disconnected from who we really are, without knowing why. In essence, the shadow self is not something to fear. It's a wounded, neglected part of us that wants to be seen, heard, and understood. By bringing it into the light of awareness, We don't just heal the past, we also reclaim the energy, creativity, and authenticity that has been hidden away for too long. How the shadow controls you. Your shadow is not just some distant psychological concept. It actively shapes your daily life in ways you rarely notice. It wields power through subtle but powerful mechanisms, quietly pulling strings behind your emotional curtain. 1. Emotional reactions. Ever been hit by sudden waves of anger, jealousy, or shame that feel out of proportion or come from nowhere? That's your shadow hijacking your emotions. These unexpected outbursts are not random. They are the shadow's way of signaling unresolved parts of yourself trying to break through. When you feel irrationally angry or envious, it's often your shadow pushing to be seen and acknowledged. 2. Projection. One of the most sneaky shadow tricks is projection. You look at someone else and criticize traits that actually belong to you, but that you refuse to admit. For example, you might despise arrogance in others, yet secretly crave the confidence and recognition that arrogance symbolizes. Projection shields you from uncomfortable truths by blaming others, but it also blinds you to the parts of yourself begging for attention. 3. Self-sabotage. Have you ever ruined a great relationship, missed a big opportunity, or destroyed your own peace of mind without fully understanding why? Your shadow thrives on self-sabotage. It sabotages your efforts because it's afraid of change, vulnerability, or success. These unconscious acts of destruction are your shadow's way of maintaining control, keeping you stuck in familiar patterns, even when those patterns hurt you. 4. Insecurity and shame. At its core, the shadow traps you in a loop of feeling not enough. It feeds on insecurity and shame, convincing you that your true self is flawed or unlovable. This toxic narrative keeps you hiding behind masks, afraid to show your authentic self for fear of rejection. The shadow's grip distorts your self-worth, making it difficult to embrace who you really are. Suspenseful reflection. How many times have you looked back and thought, "Why did I do that?" This question haunts us because the shadow operates beneath our conscious awareness. It steers us in directions we don't understand, creating patterns of confusion and regret. Recognizing the shadow's control is the first step to breaking free, but it requires courage to face what lies in the dark corners of your psyche. Michael's story. Michael was the quintessential nice guy. At work, at home, with friends, he was always the agreeable one, polite to a fault, never raising his voice, and always quick with a smile or a nod. He listened more than he spoke, and when opinions clashed, he often stepped back rather than push his own. It wasn't that he lacked ideas or strength. He simply believed it was better to avoid conflict than to rock the boat. But beneath the calm surface, Michael was wrestling with something far less serene. For years, he had quietly suppressed a growing storm of anger and resentment. It wasn't the everyday frustrations everyone faced, but a deeper, more persistent bitterness toward those around him who were louder, more aggressive, and seemingly more successful. People who pushed forward unapologetically, grabbing attention and opportunities. He envied them, and at the same time, despised the parts of himself that felt so timid, so invisible. Growing up, Michael had been taught that ambition was arrogance and anger was bad, things to be controlled, buried deep inside. Be humble, his parents would say. Don't make waves. So he learned to silence his desires and emotions, to wear the mask of the perfect polite man. But inside, the tension was building. Every time he swallowed his frustration, it added weight to the invisible burden he carried. One day at work, everything came to a head. Michael was part of a team project that had hit some snags. Despite his best efforts to communicate clearly and keep the group on track, the blame landed squarely on him when something went wrong, something beyond his control. His manager called him out in front of the entire team, pointing fingers and demanding answers. Michael's heart sank. This wasn't the first time he had been unfairly blamed, but this time it felt different. It felt like the last straw. For a moment, something inside Michael shattered. His usual calm cracked. "Why do I always get treated like this?" he burst out, his voice trembling but fierce. His co-workers fell silent. He could feel their shocked eyes on him, but for once, he didn't care. The polite mask had slipped, revealing the raw anger underneath. That night, Michael lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to quiet the storm in his mind. He replayed the incident again and again, dissecting every word, every expression. He thought about all the times he had held back, swallowed his anger, and stayed quiet. For years, he had been told he was losing control whenever he showed even a hint of frustration. But now he wondered if what had really happened was something different. In the stillness of the night, a quiet realization dawned on him. The outburst was not a loss of control, but the eruption of a part of himself he had long denied. Psychologists call this the shadow, the hidden, often rejected parts of our personality. Michael's shadow was anger, ambition, and the desire to stand up for himself. It wasn't evil or wrong. It was simply buried, neglected, waiting to be acknowledged. This insight was both frightening and freeing. For so long, he had feared his anger, seeing it as a sign of failure or weakness. But now, he understood that it was a part of his whole self, one that needed to be integrated, not ignored. He realized that healing wouldn't come from pretending to be the perfect nice guy forever, but from accepting all parts of himself, even the uncomfortable ones. The next day, Michael felt different. Not because the situation at work had changed, but because he had changed. He no longer felt the same urge to shrink or apologize. Instead, he began to set small boundaries, speaking up gently but firmly. It was awkward and unfamiliar at first, but with every step, he felt more real, more whole. Michael's story is a reminder that kindness doesn't mean passivity, and that true strength often comes from embracing our shadow, the parts of ourselves we're afraid to show. In facing his suppressed anger, Michael didn't lose control. He found control, and in that, the first steps toward healing. Why you must face your shadow. You can't run from your shadow. The more you try to suppress or ignore it, the more it gains control over your life. It lurks beneath the surface, influencing your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, often in ways you don't realize. Denial might feel easier in the moment, but shadows don't disappear. They fester and grow stronger, quietly sabotaging your peace and growth. Importantly, shadows aren't just personal. They're generational and societal too. Families, cultures, and communities pass down collective shadows that shape our beliefs and fears. For instance, messages like "men don't cry," "women shouldn't speak up," or "success is selfish" are societal shadows that confine and distort our true selves. These inherited shadows can limit our potential and trap us in roles that feel unnatural or oppressive. Recognizing when your shadow is influencing you is crucial. There are clear warning signs that signal when it's time to face what's hidden. You might notice yourself overreacting to minor triggers, repeatedly entering toxic relationships, or struggling with chronic anxiety and depression. Sometimes it's a persistent feeling that something's missing, a deep emptiness that no external success or distraction can fill. These signals indicate that your shadow is calling for attention. The need to confront shadow aspects echoes the Socratic parallel. Like Socrates, who faced punishment for challenging uncomfortable truths, we too face resistance, often internally, when we dare to confront our own darkness. The process is rarely easy or pleasant, but it's necessary for authentic growth. Avoiding these truths keeps us stuck, while embracing them leads to transformation. In essence, facing your shadow isn't just a psychological exercise, it's a path to freedom. It allows you to reclaim parts of yourself that have been hidden or denied, integrate them consciously, and live more fully and authentically. Only by stepping into this uncomfortable terrain can you break free from old patterns and begin to thrive. Introduction to shadow work. When we hear about shadow work, it's easy to assume it's just another form of self-improvement, a way to fix what's broken inside us. But shadow work is not about fixing yourself. Rather, it's about self-reintegration, welcoming and understanding the parts of yourself that have been hidden, denied, or rejected. These hidden aspects, your shadow, carry immense power and wisdom, and embracing them allows you to become more whole, authentic, and at peace. Shadow work, fixing yourself. Many people approach personal growth with the goal of becoming better, stronger, or more polished versions of themselves. Shadow work flips that notion. Instead of trying to erase or correct the parts of you that seem dark, uncomfortable, or wrong, shadow work invites you to lean into these aspects with curiosity and compassion. It's about integration, not improvement. Your shadow contains feelings, thoughts, and traits that society, family, or even your own beliefs told you to hide away. These might be fears, anger, shame, desires, or impulses that felt unsafe to express. When ignored or suppressed, the shadow can cause distress, confusion, or repetitive patterns that hold you back. But when acknowledged and embraced, the shadow becomes a source of insight and healing. The goal is not to become fearless or perfect. Those are illusions, but to become whole, with all parts of yourself acknowledged and honored. 3. Foundational steps to begin shadow work. Getting started with shadow work can feel daunting, but breaking it down into simple steps helps create a clear and compassionate path forward. Step 1. Identify your triggers. One of the most accessible ways to start shadow work is to pay attention to your triggers. Notice who or what irritates you irrationally or causes an outsized emotional reaction. These triggers aren't random. They are clues pointing to parts of your shadow. Ask yourself, what does this say about me? For example, if someone's arrogance sets you off, is it possible that there is a part of you that feels insecure or ashamed about your own self-worth? Or if you find yourself judging another's laziness harshly, could that be a projection of your own fears about being unproductive or failing? Recognizing projection, the process where we unconsciously attribute our own unacceptable feelings onto others, is a key skill in shadow work. These moments are invitations to pause and reflect rather than react. Step 2. Track emotional patterns. Journaling is a powerful tool to deepen your awareness of your shadow. Over days or weeks, write down recurring emotions like fear, shame, anger, or sadness. Note when you feel small, defensive, or overly emotional. What situations bring up these feelings? Who are you with? What thoughts accompany these moments? By tracking emotional patterns, you start to see the bigger picture of what your shadow contains. Maybe you notice a persistent fear of abandonment, or a recurring shame about your body or your choices. These patterns help illuminate what needs attention and compassion. The act of writing itself provides distance from overwhelming feelings, making them easier to explore with kindness rather than judgment. Step 3. Dialogue with the shadow. Once you've identified triggers and emotional patterns, you can begin a dialogue with your shadow. This can be done through meditation, journaling, or even speaking aloud. Imagine your shadow as a younger version of yourself, perhaps a child who was hurt, misunderstood, or afraid. Gently ask, "What do you want me to know?" Or, "Why do you feel this way?" Approach this conversation with radical honesty, but without judgment. Allow whatever arises to come forward, whether it's anger, sadness, fear, or longing. This practice helps you build trust with your shadow and integrate its messages into your conscious self. It's like befriending a hidden part of yourself that has been carrying burdens alone for a long time. Important reminder: becoming whole. Not perfect shadow work is not a quick fix or a path to becoming fearless. Instead, it's a lifelong process of embracing complexity and contradiction within yourself. You will find aspects you dislike or fear, and that's okay. The goal is to honor these parts, learn from them, and make space for your full humanity. Through shadow work, the parts of you that once felt like obstacles become allies. Your triggers transform from sources of frustration into gateways for insight. Your emotional patterns become maps, guiding you toward deeper self-awareness and healing. In the end, shadow work is about coming home to yourself in a fuller, richer way, where light and dark coexist in harmony. It's an invitation to walk through life with authenticity and compassion, carrying your whole self with pride and love. What happens when you do shadow work? Engaging in shadow work is a transformative process that unlocks profound shifts within your inner world and outer life. Here's what typically unfolds when you commit to this journey. More self-awareness. Shadow work teaches you to recognize your unconscious patterns before they take control. Instead of reacting automatically or falling back into habitual behaviors, you catch yourself in the moment. This heightened awareness allows you to pause, reflect, and consciously choose a different response. Over time, this rewiring of your mind fosters greater emotional intelligence and self-mastery. Greater compassion. As you explore your shadow, you encounter parts of yourself that you may have judged or rejected. Your fears, vulnerabilities, and imperfections. This deep self-exploration cultivates compassion not only for yourself, but for others too. Understanding your own struggles opens your heart to the struggles of those around you. You become more patient, forgiving, and empathetic, creating richer and more meaningful connections. Clarity of desire. Shadow work helps strip away the layers of conditioning, expectations from family, society, or culture that have shaped your decisions. With these external influences peeled back, you gain clear insight into what you truly want. No longer are you living a life dictated by others' ideals. Instead, you align your actions and goals with your authentic self, pursuing a path that resonates deeply within. Authentic power. By shining light on your shadow, you liberate yourself from being driven by shame, guilt, or fear. This newfound freedom transforms your energy from reactionary to intentional. You reclaim your power to choose how to show up in the world. This authentic power is not about control over others, but control over yourself, your mindset, your emotions, and your actions. It's the foundation for living with integrity, courage, and true confidence. Carl Jung's profound insight reminds us that true enlightenment doesn't come from fantasizing about light and perfection, but from courageously confronting the darkness within us. It is in acknowledging and understanding our hidden fears, flaws, and desires, the parts we often suppress, that we find genuine growth and healing. This journey inward is not easy, but it is essential. So, don't shy away from your inner shadows. Approach them with curiosity instead of fear. Your greatest strength isn't found in perfection or in hiding your imperfections, but in embracing the very parts of yourself you've been taught to reject. When you make peace with your darkness, you reclaim the power to live authentically and fully. The real question is, are you the one truly living your life? Or is your shadow still pulling the strings? The answer lies within your willingness to face the unknown parts of yourself and to step boldly into the light that comes from conscious self-awareness.